Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this presentation is titled Cross the Picket Line During the Strike, and I'll Make You a 747 Captain, with the subtitle of Would You Buy a Used Car from Richard Ferris? Well, this is Tricky Dick Ferris here. He was the CEO and president of United Airlines back during our 1985 little unpleasantrynesses. And his idea was I was going to break the pilot group into two. He's going to, you guys that are on there now, we'll keep your pay, but the new guys, we're going to bring them on at a B scale, lower rate. Well, of course, how does that work out? My son, who's now a 777 pilot, would not have appreciated that, but it's a different world now. There's a shortage of pilots. Back then, wasn't quite the case. So the company had more leverage, and they were going to try to split us, and we go, nope, not a good idea. 97% of the pilots voted to go on strike, and I had too much respect for the guys to go against it, if for no other reason than that. Now, I'd come through the military. We didn't have unions in the military. I didn't really know anything about a union. But I respected the people I worked with. And I was in the second to the last class hired before they shut down the training center. So I'm 10 from the bottom of the seniority list out of 6,000 pilots. So, I'm in a pretty low position. So this guy, Dick Ferris, comes into operations. And he's probably standing about 4 or 5 feet from me. And he says, fellas, because he liked to call us fellas. He said, fellas, you come to work for me on May 18th. That's the day after the strike, May 17th. You come to work for me on May 18th. That's going to be great. And he says, a young guy like you. And he points right at me and he says, you could be a 747 captain. Well, that's pretty interesting. Is that enticing? I could jump 30 years of seniority, jump over all the people that, had come to work that I respected, and I had the utmost respect for these people. I did military flying. Airline flying was a kind of a different operation. We were the fair weather Air Force, especially in the training command. If it didn't look so good, we didn't fly. These guys flew in all sorts of weather, and it was pretty darn impressive for a training weenie to, in the Air Force. And I did flight tests too, but, especially flight tests, if there was hardly a cloud in the sky, we didn't fly. So I was pretty impressed by, the type of weather these guys operated in. It was pretty interesting. So here I am sitting in the panel of the 727, I'm flying sideways. Well, I wanted to be a pilot, but this is where you start out. You pay your dues, but all right, so if I come to work on May 18th, I could get to be a 747 captain. Well, I thought, I'm going to have to check this thing out. Well, so I go out to one of our 747s, and first of all, if you're junior, you walk down the jetway to the airplane, and it's easy, it's all downhill. If you're senior, you walk up to the aircraft, and I had one captain tell me, he says, when you can walk under the aircraft without taking your hat off, you're senior. So I go walking up 747, I get on board, I turn left, I go up to what I thought was the cockpit door. I open it up and it's full of coats. I go, what the heck is this? And I ask the flight attendant, I say, where are the pilots? And she goes, well, you're looking at the closet there, Bunky. And she says, it's upstairs. And I go, I have to climb up even more? All right. So I go upstairs, I get up there, and I'm looking around, and you are setting high. I mean, it is darn right scary up there. And that just was not what I was used to. Because you are really far off of the ground, and it's kind of scary up there. Well, I'm on a trip, and we got a little layover there, and I decide, well, I'm just going to go up and sit in the left seat there. And the captain, I can see him out in the gate area. He's looking down. He sees somebody sitting in his seat, and he goes, well, what the heck's going on here? And he comes on board and says, what are you doing? And I go, oh, I'm just practicing for May 18th in case I don't get a 47. At least a 27 I think would be fairly good to fly. And of course, he knew I was kidding, and he said, get my posterior out of the seat. And he wasn't very kind about it, but I knew where he was coming from. So I'm back sitting in the back seat here, and I'm with another crew, and I come on board, and the co-pilot's sitting up there looking forward, and the captain comes on, and he says, well, how you doing? And I said, oh, I'm not doing very well at all. And he goes, well, what do you mean? And he says, well, I was in operations, and Dick Ferris told me that if I crossed the picket line, I would get to be a 747 captain. And now I get this videotape They wanted to have a meeting, the company, and nobody came except for a small group that you really didn't want to be associated with because these guys were sleaze bags, 10 times over. And they were saying the pain's going to begin on May 18th, and these guys were laughing and how great it was going to be. And I said, well, I got that tape, and at first they said, Dick Ferris, the president, said if I cross the picket line, man, I'm going to be a 47 captain. Now I get this videotape from our vice president of operations, and he says, well, we got to get the airline running. We're going to have to train everybody first, and it could be months before you get to be trained as a 747 captain. And I said, really? I have to wait months to become a 747 captain? And I says, if you can't be truthful to your scabs, who can you be truthful to? And he could tell I was joking. The co-pilot, of course, he's looking forward. He turns around. He starts to come out of his chair and he goes, are you serious? And I could see the look at his face. I go, no, just kidding. Because I think he was going to take me out in the jetway and it wouldn't have been pretty at all. Now, for a little bit of history. My dad was a World War II veteran. He comes back and he becomes a firefighter. And I didn't know it at the time, but because I was very young at the time, but he actually started the Firemen's Union in Iowa City, the fire department there. So he was a good union guy, but, unions didn't really come up when I was in the Air Force or, stuff like that. So I didn't really realize this history, but it was interesting. I mean, I never said anything about, intending in any respect to cross the picket line because it never crossed my mind. I had just gotten, a short time ago, I'd worked for Boeing and I was going to go back. That was my fallback thing. So it was interesting, but he later mentioned to my mom, and I found out after the strike that he said to my mom, he says, I just hope he never crosses the picket line. But he never said anything directly to me, which I thought was interesting. So I'm in Chicago. I'm living in Wichita at the time because I'd been recalled and I was going to move to Chicago, but it looked like this strike thing was coming. And I decided, that's really not a good time to move. And there were some people that I knew in my situation that one guy bought a new house, he bought a new boat, and he put himself in a situation where he had to make a lot of money. And he says, well, I had to cross the picket line because I had all these debts. And I go, yeah, you knew this was coming. But anyway, so I'm walking the picket line, and I'm one time walking with this guy who's a 747 captain. He's at one end of the spectrum on seniority, I'm at the other. And of course, they're looking at us and stuff, and I'm going, yeah, I could pay somebody to carry this picket sign because I make so much money as an airline pilot. And I had a really significant raise because my first 6 months, I made $600 a month. Now, that's before taxes, of course. And after 6 months, I got a raise, and it was great. I'm up to $1,100 a month. Yeah, I mean, we are living high on the hog. And, of course, I'm up there doing this, and I'm talking to my wife back home, and she says, would you call the company? They keep calling. They want to talk to you. They want you to come back to work, and I know, that she got tired of hearing this. So I said, okay, I'm going to call it. And I decided I'll take a little different tact, So I call him up. The guy says, oh, man, it's great now. Things are so wonderful. And I go, well, I don't know about that. I didn't really like the job before. And, it's just a big mess now. And I did really well in engineering, which was true. I did really well in engineering. I'm just going to get my engineering job back at Boeing. And, I'm not going to worry about any of this crap. And the guy said, oh, no, you really want to come back? No, don't bother calling me. I'm going back to my Boeing job. Well, of course, the strike's wearing on. It ended up being 29 days, but, each day can kind of be long there. And there's no money coming in, of course. And I called up my old boss and I said, hey, I've got this letter that says it'll be years, if ever, before I come back. And I go, I'm at the bottom of the seniority list. If these replacement pilots displace me, it could be years before I could come back. And he says, you want your old job back? And I said, I'd love to have my old job back. So the funny thing was, I in-processed at Boeing, and I'm in my car. I've got my new ID badge. I actually got a nice raise coming back. That was a cool tactic. Quit the job, come back, get a nice raise. So I'm coming back. I got my ID. I'm in the car, and WBBM announces, because I could hear it, way back in Wichita. I'd driven home by this time. And it says they had a tentative agreement. And I go, well, the thing what you do with people is you whipsaw them like that. You make them think everything's good, then it's bad, then it's good, then it's bad. So I go, well, this is part of their tactic. So I talked to my boss, and his brother actually was an airline pilot for Frontier, so he kind of knew how things worked. And I said, hey, um, they're telling me they've got an agreement, but I don't trust it. And I'm supposed to come to work tomorrow. What should I do? And he says, well, call up personnel and say, hey, you need another week off for personal reasons. And we'll take a week. You know, if the strike doesn't work out, if it continues, come to work in a week. Um, if not, just tell them forget it and you go back. Well, it did hold, and I ended up going back, and it was several years of very interesting situations, which I'll probably cover in a few more presentations because that was a extremely interesting time in my career. And I said to my wife, you know, we've been through a lot here. And if this doesn't get better, the next contract comes up in 3 years. If this doesn't get better, we're just going to pull the plug on this. I said, this just isn't worth it. But it did get better. And I ended up having a very nice 36-year career in spite of, you know, the furlough. But the furlough actually was very beneficial. But anyway, that is my tale leading up to our 29-day strike at United Airlines. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.